I'm,
It's okay. It's okay.
they're currently being physically extracted from the room.
Okay.
Just
So
to do make a noise. Sky, go. 1 second.
it's okay.
Sky, come on. Out. Sky, come here. Come on.
Hey guys,
Come
for
here.
everyone listening and watching, this is Emma Stuart. She is evacuating the dogs from the living room so that we can start the podcast. So normally I try not to do
Yes.
any editing on on my podcast, and I'll probably just leave it in. So so, so officially, welcome to the Ultra Running Sun podcast, Emma Stuart.
Thank you. Good to see you. Yeah. I know nobody else can see us, but I can see you. That's the main thing.
So it's been one of those evenings, hasn't it? Trying to, in fact, this interview has been like long overdue, and it's yeah, we had trouble trying to make it work, didn't we? Originally, trying to find a date that worked for both of us, and then tonight, both of our laptops decided that they were gonna. Mine crashed, and also crashed halfway through an update. Yours did the same thing. The mic wasn't working, so we're we're half an hour late, but we're here, ready to go. So, is everything okay your end now? So we're happy and comfortable,
Yeah.
aren't we?
I hope it's not a sign of things to come in this podcast.
No,
This could be disastrous.
it's probably someone telling me I need to update all of my gear. I'm due for updating my podcasting equipment, so this is probably the sign that I need. So, but anyway, here we are. Finally, we're here making it happen. Um, so Emma, what I normally do is for people that aren't aware of who you are and where you've come from. I like to ask the question at the start, sort of if you are a an ultra running superhero. Superheroes have like a backstory and an origin story. That's what they call it. So, what is your superhero origin story? How did you get to where you are now in ultra running? How did it all begin, and how did it lead up to where we are now?
Yeah, I probably like in the grand scheme of things, like a relative newcomer to the sport of ultra running because I've not always run. I was really bad at sports at school, so I was always last in every race. Yeah, didn't really do any sports bar hockey. Wasn't very good at that either. Didn't really do any sports at university aside from a little bit of climbing. So I only really started running. Um, oh, it must be about, is it 6 years ago now? 2018 was when I started running. So yeah, just almost 6 years ago. Kind of out of nowhere, really. Just on a whim, decided I was going to do it. Signed up to a half marathon on the Isle of Uist, where my friend lives. So it's a road half marathon. And yeah, did that with very little training under my belt. Did all right at that. Thought, it's not that, maybe it's not that bad a sport. I'll have a go at another one. So I did two more half marathons, and then I decided it wasn't long enough. So I went straight to the 50K after that. So my partner, um, he probably was maybe one of the reasons I kind of got into running to some extent because he's done it for quite a long time. And yeah, he decided he wanted to go up to ultra distance. So we both signed up for the Manx Mountain Marathon, which is a 50-kilometer race that um, goes across all the highest peaks in the Isle of Man from north to south. Really stunning route, really, really beautiful. Well, we were really lucky with the weather, so we had some stunning views. Really good race, really well organized, really enjoyed it. So I did that with not much training under my belt, but I'd managed to run 20 miles. So I'd done the Ullswater Way before that race, but 20 miles was the furthest I'd been. And so I tackled that. And I was second lady. So I was quite surprised at that, really. Then a couple of weeks later, I signed up to the Keswick 50K. And then I won that. And I was like, oh, this is quite a fun sport. I quite enjoy this. And maybe not horrific at it either. So yeah, I kind of went from there. Yeah, and I just suppose over the years I've kind of progressed the distance. So just getting longer and longer. Um, really like the 100-mile distance. That's probably my favorite distance. I have tackled 200 miles, but you're starting to get into the real mentally fatiguing races at the 200-mile distance. Yeah, and so yeah, it was kind of funny because I did the couple of 50Ks back in kind of 2019, and then I never really went back to them. I always did longer distances up until 2 weeks ago, just over 2 weeks ago, where I went back to my first 50. I did a 50K for the first time in nearly 4 years. So that was quite a breath of fresh air. It's actually quite nice being finished within 5 hours rather than 15 or 30 or 60 or 80 or however long it is. Yeah. So it was just a little bit of a it was an afternoon, really. It was quite nice.
Do you now that you've done all the the big stuff, do you feel like there's only so much of that that you can do before you start sort of craving the shorter stuff again, or do you think, because it's hard, isn't it, whether to know whether you should have a speciality or not, or whether you a kind of runner where you don't feel like you should have a speciality and you should be doing all distances?
No, 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 no. I really don't enjoy the shorter distances. So stick me on a fell race and I actually feel like I'm going to die and I don't enjoy any second of it. So I'll always be a long distance runner. Like I can't even see myself doing a kind of a road marathon because it's just a completely different it's almost a completely different sport because the ultra running distance is so much more than just physical. Why I really love that sport because it's, yeah, okay, physical fitness is really important, but there's so much more to it, like managing your nutrition, managing your feet, managing pain, managing to some extent boredom sometimes because you're out there for, well, the Tour de Géants, I was out for 80 hours. Like, that's a lot of time with yourself, and the views are amazing, don't get me wrong, but like at the end of the day, you're running half of it in the dark, where the only thing you can see is what your head torch lights up in front of you. So, there are different elements to it that, for me, are far more attractive than the shorter stuff, where actually it's about maximizing your physical potential and going all out for as long as you can. Whereas, like I say, with these longer distances, 100 miles, if you go all out from the start, you're probably not finishing that race, or if you do finish that race, you're not going to be in a very good place. So yeah, so no, I do the odd fell race for a bit of crack and just to remind me why I don't like it, but no, for me it'll always be the longer the distance, the more I enjoy it.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely. So when did you sort of make the move then? So where are you from originally in Ireland?
So I'm from the west coast of Ireland. There is not much running where I'm from. So realistically, the vast majority of people are road runners. We have so the open access that we have in England isn't really a thing in Ireland. So you do get farmers shouting at you if you end up on the mountains. There kind of have been some paths that have kind of manifested over the years, but it's still a bit like, oh, should you be going up there or should you not? Um, and then there are a lot of very groomed trails. So like really kind of, I suppose it's to kind of encourage like um people to be more active, in the towns and cities and stuff. They do these like very, very groomed routes. So, we do have some nice trails where I live, but they are very, very much designed to be accessible. So there's not very many of them. And, there's absolutely no technical element to them at all. So no, I had no interest in running. In fact, my parents can't really understand why I run still, even many years later. They just don't understand it, especially why I run up mountains. Um, yeah, so it's not really, actually, it has been quite interesting because just last year, I think was it last year, there has been a fell running league set up in Ireland, some of which are in Sligo, which are in my home county. So actually, the sport is growing hugely in Ireland, and it's really nice to see because I didn't have that opportunity growing up. And even I noticed like IMRA's, which is the Mountain Running Association, they're organizing like a women's only trail running weekend in. Yeah, I hope that now there's going to be a lot more opportunities for kind of younger people to come forward and start doing some trail running and really enjoy it because I do think like it's so much more rewarding than just pounding pavements all the time.
Yeah, that's something that I noticed myself because where I live, literally in Derbyshire, middle of England, I can come out of my house and I'm literally straight onto a footpath, and I can go on a trail. I can go up into Derbyshire and go, into the Peak District and everything. And I kind of took that for granted. And I've been over to Ireland quite a few times for work. And I was like, right, brilliant. I'll go and run some Irish trails, and realised that, like you said, there isn't the open access, is there? Like I was looking for somewhere to go for a run, and I ended up. I was trying to think of where I was staying. What was the place I was staying? Ooh, one of the places I stayed was Ballyconnell, somewhere around there. And I had to. So every time I've been, I have made a point of going for a trail run, but I've had to literally get in the van and drive to somewhere that has specifically got a trailhead, which is kind of like in the US where you have a designated like trailhead where everyone parks at the car park and then they go on the
Yeah.
trail. And to me, it seemed like that, and I couldn't quite get over the fact that in the UK there's just literally like access to everywhere. There's a footpath for going in more directions than you even need, and I'd kind of like sort of imagined Ireland as being, the Emerald Island, and I'll go and run on these like green mountains and everything. And I got there and I was like, oh, I can't go there, can't go there, I can't go there. So it's
No, it's true.
I find that like mind-boggling. Is it always sort of just been like a land owning issue, has it, or is it just no national trails or that kind of thing?
No, so there are national trails. Each county has a certain number of waymarked trails, but there's so few of them. And like pretty much every trail is waymarked. So it's not like, I live in the Lake District. Oh, you can get lost on the network of paths because half of them aren't even on the map. And there's paths that they convert, they diverge and then they converge and they're just everywhere. It's an absolute maze of paths. You just don't get that because all of the paths are very, like as I say, they're groomed. They're actually specifically put in. They're not just ones that have like, because thousands of people have used them over the year, they've just kind of morphed into this network of footpaths. Um, I think as well, like it is much more like America, yeah. So all of the land is pretty much privately owned. So we don't have that open access that you have in England. And people are very, like farmers are very funny about people being on the land. So like if you ended up, well, one of the things that is a bit of an issue is like there's no gates or stiles. Well, there might be gates, but they'll be padlocked. So like getting onto the fells is incredibly difficult because you're going to have to go over barbed wire fences and things like that, and it just feels like you're trespassing.
Mm.
So it deters people, and people don't do it. Now there are some of the hills that are a bit more interesting, like Ben Bulben in Sligo. There have been footpaths that have kind of just happened over the years because there's been so many people that wanted to summit them. But for the most part, like you're not. It's probably, yeah, some of the bigger ones will have footpaths up them, but the majority of them are privately owned, and you're really going to struggle
Mm.
to get up there without somebody spotting you and making life difficult for you. Really, so it's not worth it. But it's quite nice. On the other hand, I did a race in Ireland 2 weeks ago, and wow, it was like the most beautifully groomed trail I've ever been on. It was amazing. I was like, wow, I actually can run for 50 kilometers. I'm not, tiptoe my way down a really technical descent like Bambi on ice. I'm actually running. It was amazing. It was completely different, because they are maintained. They're properly maintained.
Brilliant. Right, I was looking. I was trying to remember the name of the place where it was where I went, and I won't be able to pronounce the name of it, but it's basically the mountain where they filmed um, seen some Game of Thrones.
It'd be in the north then, was it?
Yeah, in the north. That was in the north. So that was it's spelled Binevenagh. Ben.
Hang on a second. Say that again.
It's spelled Binevenagh. Ben. I know
Benevena. I've never even heard of that.
Benevenagh Mountain.
Yeah,
It's like
Benevena.
it's like an amazing like cliff face, and apparently I didn't know until someone told me that they filmed some of the scenes out of Game of Thrones there with a dragon or something like that, and then they like sort of
Yeah, very good.
use that as the
Yeah, I don't know anywhere in the north. It's like,
well, where I went in the
from the
south,
Irish, Beneva.
yeah, Beneva, they might have been
Beneva, yeah, yeah.
Beneva.
Beneva. Probably. Well, if you're talking about so most place names in Ireland are apologies for the bad language, but they're bastardization of the Irish. So it's an English bastardization of the Irish
Wow.
word. So actually, for me, sometimes if I'm not 100% sure how to pronounce somewhere, so I'll go onto Wikipedia, you type it in, and it'll give you the Irish, and then I can usually deduce the English meaning by how the Irish is pronounced. So yeah, Beneva. So it'll be Beneva. Yeah.
The other
Sorry, that's a
place,
bit of a
I
random
haven't got
side note, but
no, it's good. I haven't got a picture of the other place I went. I'm trying to think where it was, but that was just in the south. Um, it was just in the south near the border, and it was like a weird like horseshoe that was really like a deep cavern. I can't remember the name of that, but that was another great run. But anyway, we're not talking about my Irish running journey. We're talking about yours. So yeah, this so the which was this 50K that you've just done. Then was it what was that, the Maurice? What was that?
yeah, the Morris Mullins. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of one. There's not a huge number of ultra runs, ultra races in Ireland, but there are growing. But kind of the Morris Mullins was probably one of the original ones. It has the route has varied quite considerably over the years. So originally it was very, very well, not to, I say very flat compared to what I would normally run. But they've kind of gradually added in. So the last few years they've added in a mountain called Jouse, and this year they added in not only Jouse but Mauldin as well. So it had quite a bit of elevation. So it's like 2,600 meters in 52 kilometers. So it's pretty hilly.
Decent.
Um, so yeah, it was the qualifying race for the European off-road mountain running championships, which is on the 1st of June in France. So that was the qualifying race to hopefully wear an Irish vest.
Wow.
So yeah, fun.
Yeah. Do you spend much training time with Ian Keith, your fellow countryman?
Oh, I love Ian. Ian's like one of my favorite people. Oh, he's such a dear. He's brilliant. No, I don't train with him much because he obviously lives in Ireland and I don't. I live in Penrith. So, but I usually, I've seen him the last two times I've been over. Yeah, I have a lot of time for Ian. He's a super guy, really, really good. He's been yeah, he's been really helpful for me with the Morris Mullins, because he's won it a number of times. And I didn't have time to recce the race route before the actual event. So yeah, Ian was really kind of helpful in, giving me a bit of beat and a bit of advice, I suppose, for the race. So that was really good. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a super nice guy, isn't he? I met him
Yeah.
quite a few times on the Spine race, and his I just love his like demeanor in his approach to things. Like he's just his style, especially with that race as well with the Spine. He's just like just keeps on pushing, and never
Yeah.
nothing seems to phase him at all. Yeah, he's an absolute legend. Yeah, good guy, Ian is.
Is
So sort of closer to home over here then. You how was sort of so I'm just having a look at your big list of wins that you've had. So you've won Ultra-Trail Snowdonia, 100 miler, and Arc of Attrition. So what's what's your opinion on those two races then, and how they stack up? When when you've sort of done such a beast of a race like Tour de Géants, how do the Arc and the UTS sort of compare to those in those races?
Yeah, so the Arc of Attrition and UTS are two completely opposite ends of the 100-mile spectrum, really. UTS is a beast. Like I found it a very challenging race for lots and lots of different reasons. I was out for a long time, so I was out for 28 hours. It's quite slow going, it's quite technical. It was quite hot. But then the night, so obviously the day when we started, the weather wasn't too bad, but when darkness fell, there was really thick clag. And I don't think that the people who were marking the trail kind of took into account the fact that there might be thick clag. So it was actually some of it was incredibly difficult to navigate. And my GPX didn't match where the flags were. And I ended up going cross country through Tussocks, not on any path for ages. Like, I'd recce the route, so I knew that it would get me to where I needed to be eventually. But there was just little things like that that made it really difficult. Um, and yeah, and then when the sun came up, then it got really, really hot. But yeah, it's just so difficult because a lot of it is on trods, but it's not on like well-defined paths. And I think a lot of Europeans who came over to tackle it as a UTMB race kind of got a bit of a shock, really. I have heard independently of anyone from the UK, like from people in Europe, that it is well renowned as the hardest UTMB race on the calendar. And I mean, the elevation isn't as great as some of them. Like, I think there's one in Indonesia that's got like 14, 15,000 meters. But I think what makes it difficult is the quality of the trails and how wet the trails are. Because they are so boggy. Like, my feet were just so I didn't get any blisters, but like the I can't really describe what it was, but like towards the end of the race, like every time my feet got submerged into ice cold bog water, they just spasmed like really badly. And then I'd come out of the boggy water and I would struggle to walk or run for like 2 or 3 minutes while like the circulation came back to my feet. And you don't, that's a bit of a unique situation. And I certainly know that like the likes of Sabrina Stanley, like she was just like, "'Tis this bog." Like, I think the bog is so unique to Britain, and I think it's really what like swallows up like European or North American runners, because they just don't know how to deal with it.
Yeah.
And it really adds, like, it's so energy destroying. Um, so I found that a very, very difficult 100 miler. And then the Arc of Attrition, like to this day, is probably still my favorite 100 miler. Like, it is such a superb event. And I rant and rave about it to anyone who will listen, because it is so well organized. It's such a stunning route. Like, I do not think there is a more beautiful route in the UK. And what, like, yes, I know most of it's run at night, but that, we were really fortunate with the weather. But like, there's just a certain like purity to running in the dark, with, the trail is lit up by your head torch, but the constant background noise is the Atlantic Ocean crashing against the rocks beneath your, like, just to the side of your, literally, it depends on where you are, but like 10, 15 meters below you. And I don't know, there's just something about it. Like, you're never far enough away from the ocean that you can't hear it. And I just find that so mesmerizing. I think maybe it's because I grew up on the Atlantic coast as well. So, it has certain memories of home. We don't have something like the Southwest Coast path in, where I live, or where I'm from, that where you can hug the coastline and it's really stunning. Like, we don't have that. But certainly the actual coastline itself really reminds me of home. And yeah, I just think it's just a tremendous race. Like I just think if anyone wants to pick a good 100 miler in the UK, it is top of my list, 100%.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I mean, I haven't done them all, so but at the moment, it's top of my list.
It was funny you said about where you're talking about the bogs at UTS. I was thinking it was made a connection between the bogs of that race and the bogs of the spine race. And while I was last year, I was on the media team for the spine race, and um, everyone got really excited because Courtney Dauwalter started following the spine race
Yeah.
Instagram account, and lots of rumors all went around that she was going to do the spine race one year, like the following year, and obviously that set off sort of like a conversation of how Americans, our US runners would fare on a race such as like UTS and the spine race with those conditions. I've ran in the US. I've ran on the fire roads and everything, and it's like nice groomed trail. And when they say single track, it's not quite the same as like a sheep trod over here, is it, through bogs? How do you think? Because I know you've obviously raced Courtney Dauwalter, haven't you? So Trans Gran Canaria, you were third, weren't you? And she won that race. Did you? Is it sort of horses for courses? How do you feel that given obviously you were third place in that race with her in it? How do you think she would fare on something more boggy?
I often think about this. Like, it sounds really sad, but like I've just been on. So yeah, I live in Penrith, so I'm quite close to the Eastern Lakes. Um, I train up on like Lodpot Hill, Huffscar Hill, Askin Fell, up above Pooley Bridge a lot. And it's wet. It is really wet. And I've just been up there tonight and we have just had, I mean, honestly, we are going to be underwater soon. I fully believe that. If it doesn't stop raining, we're going to be underwater. And I was running down this path that it was just, I didn't really know where the path was because it was just so wet. And I'm like running down this and and then you take a step and suddenly you're up to your like knees in bog. And I was just thinking like, what do like if we got some Europeans, because Europeans also don't like to get their feet wet. If we get some Europeans over here and like some of the best, or Courtney, or like some of the best American trail runners, and stick them on this, what would they do? Like, how would they cope with it? Would they enjoy it? Would they relish in it? Would they just think we're absolutely insane for even going outside the house in this sort of weather? I don't know. I often think about this. Um, Courtney is a superb trail runner. So she is out and out a trail runner. And I would love to see her on the spine because I don't know. I honestly don't know. Because there's two things to it that may make it challenging for her. One is that the terrain is probably unlike anything. I mean, I'm sure she trains in muddy conditions, don't get me wrong. So the mud probably isn't an issue, but it's the saturated bog, the bog where you take a step and you don't know how deep you're going, that sort of bog that just, the whole Pennine Way is just, a minefield of it. And two, all of her races are supported. So how would Courtney fare where she suddenly has to go 40 miles in between um aid stations?
Mm.
And not having her husband there to crew her and having to carry a lot more gear. So like a lot, I was surprised on Tour de Géants. I mean, I was laughed at because I was carrying so much gear on Tour de Géants because I'm just so used to carrying loads of stuff because we don't have crewed races. We do have some, but we don't have a lot of crewed races. We don't have a lot of uh like Courtney would be used to races where you can pace, she can have a pacer, she doesn't have to carry much minimum kit. So yeah, suddenly when you put a spine pack on her bag, have 40 miles in between aid stations, uncrewed, so her husband isn't allowed to support her, and you've got the quality of the winter trails on the Pennine Way, I think it would be hard for her. But I would love to see her try it because I would love to see, I would love to see her perform on that.
Mm.
So yeah. I don't know if Courtney listens. Courtney, if you're listening, come and do the spine.
You don't listen to this. Yeah, it's true that so that second leg. So yeah, Hebden Hayes like 44 miles to the first checkpoint, and that second checkpoint at Hawes. So it's like 60 odd miles between Hebden Hay and Hawes, and obviously you've got like kind of they're not checkpoints. They're just literally just safety checkpoints. That is a long section between there, and it's a good job they put it at the start, to be honest, because if you had that towards the end, you'd have so many people dropping out, wouldn't you? Like having to face like a 60-mile section between a checkpoint. Yeah, but it would be interesting to see, to see how she did. She's all credit to her. She's got the experience, hasn't she? So it'd be interesting to see how she did. So what was your sort of I think just going back to Tour de Géants then, is that the furthest you've been then? Tour de Géants.
Yeah. So that was like more than twice my longest distance before that. I think the furthest I'd been before that was probably 105 miles, and Tour de Géants is 220. So yeah, that was a big step up. It's a really beautiful race. I loved it. Like, I mean, I learned a lot. I made a lot of mistakes. A lot of mistakes. Um, and it was tough mentally. It was more tough mentally than physically. I felt really great until the last 20 miles. My feet were in pieces, but you don't need your feet for running, do you? Um, I mean, I had no skin on the bottom of my feet, but my muscles felt great. Just my feet, and yeah, my feet were pretty bad. Um, so yeah, physically I felt really, really good until the last 20 miles, but mentally I really suffered because I really messed up my sleep strategy, like really messed it up. Had some pretty harrowing experiences, which
What
yeah, I
was
think a lot of people.
what
Go
what
ahead.
what was your sleep strategy sort of before going into it? Because obviously having a plan going into a race is sometimes it's different into when it actually transpires.
Yeah.
So what did you plan?
Well, my plan was kind of to try and I'm pretty good on no sleep in general. Like I do really well on no sleep. I always have. But my plan was to kind of roughly aim for like 20 minutes to half an hour a night. Uh, but or maybe up to 40 minutes. But I couldn't sleep at all. When I first so I first lay down for sleep. So basically the race started at 10 o'clock. My aim was to go kind of 36 hours without sleep, really, was before I was going to think about sleep. So I was going to get to, there was like a specific refuge that I wanted to get to have a sleep. And I ended up, my hardest, from a sleep point of view, like my toughest time is always just before it gets light. So in that race, it was kind of 6 in the morning. I always really struggle then. And so I kind of decided, I was like, so this would have been not even 24 hours. I got to one of the aid stations and I was like, I'd felt really, really sick. I'd actually been sick. And I was like, oh, this is not, we're only 50, I don't know what distance we were in, but probably 50 miles maybe into the race, maybe a bit more, I can't remember. But anyway, I wasn't that far into the race. I was like, I'm feeling pretty sick. I did get sick and I felt better. But when I got to the aid station, I kind of was like, do you know what? I just need 10 minutes just to kind of reset. So I did have 10 minutes, that was fine. So then my next plan was to keep going till I got to this refuge, which would have been, yeah, probably about 36 hours thereabouts. Um, to have a proper sleep, and I was aiming for 40 to 45 minutes. Couldn't sleep. So I got there, couldn't sleep. Could not sleep at all. And I lay staring into space for about half an hour. And then I just closed my eyes, and the second lady, or sorry, the lady who was behind me, then came in, and I woke up. So I'd had about a minute's sleep. And then, yeah, next thing, my crew, Marco, comes in and he says, Emma, that's 40 minutes. And I was like, oh, can I just have 5 more minutes, please? So I lay back down and I slept for 5 minutes. And that was it. That was supposed to be my good sleep. And I had 5 minutes. So it kind of ruined me for the rest of the race, really. And I couldn't sleep properly. And I just ended up kind of like having 10 to 20 minute naps here and there. I did actually have a harrowing experience. So over the course of it, I got like an hour and a half of good sleep. The best sleep I had was at an aid station where my feet, like I say, were really, really bad. And I got them dressed. I mean, the medics on Tour de Géants are just amazing. They're just incredible. So I was getting my feet sorted. And it was just so nice. Like it just felt so nice then, like sorting my feet because they were a bit of a mess. I fell asleep. And I woke up and it was like, I woke up in a start and I'd been asleep for half an hour and I'd only meant to be asleep for like 10 minutes. But actually it was like the best sleep I had of the whole race. And it really set me, it set me up for a good day because it was like, it was a good time of the day that I had it. So I kind of had that sleep at about 5-ish in the morning. I can't quite remember, but it was just getting bright. So it kind of was like setting me up for the day. But yeah, that was an unscheduled one. That was just like, oh my God, the medics haven't woken me up. It's basically what's happened, and I just woke myself up. So yeah, I learned a lot from that. But yeah, it was just bad timing that like, when I wanted that good sleep, when I finally did get to sleep, somebody woke me up and then I couldn't get back to sleep. But yeah, it is what it is. I've learned from it. It made the second half the race really, really mentally very, very difficult because I don't tend to hallucinate, but I wasn't lucid. Like uh, I had no control over my brain. There was this massive disconnect between my brain and body. Like I couldn't communicate. My brain couldn't communicate to my body what it needed to do. And, I ended up getting really disorientated. I got lost at one point, lost an hour and a half of time because I got completely lost. Um, yeah, I had a really harrowing experience through the woods when you descend to kind of the second last aid station, like major aid station, where I 100% believed I was asleep. And it made me really stressed because I couldn't understand how to wake myself from this dream where I was running through the woods endlessly. Like a nightmare, really, just running through the woods and just not ever coming to the end of the woods. And I got really stressed because I couldn't figure out how to wake myself up. And I mean, the reality is I couldn't wake myself up because I was awake, but I fully believed I was asleep. And that wasn't a very nice sensation at all. And I knew what would fix everything was a 10-minute sleep, but I couldn't afford to have a 10-minute sleep because I had no alarm clock. So I didn't want to take the risk because I was obviously in the lead. I didn't want to take the risk of putting my head down and ending up being asleep for an hour or 2 hours. So I knew that all I needed was 10 minutes. That's all I needed. But I couldn't guarantee I was only going to lie down for 10 minutes. So I had to battle on. Yeah. So yeah, it's pretty tough. So I think, the main thing I learned from that is like I think had I actually banked more sleep, so rather than an hour and a half, if I had maybe 3 to 4 hours, I probably could have actually finished faster because of the mistakes I made would have cost me a lot more than an hour and a half,
Mm.
So,
It's a tricky
but you
one.
learn from this.
Yeah,
Hmm?
it's a tricky one to get right, isn't it, sleep? Because I know from my, I'm not as experienced as you, but my sort of experience of long races, I did last summer. I did the Spine Challenger North, the top section, 160 miler, and my sleep strategy for that like worked brilliantly. Like I went through the first night to the second night, and I slept for like 2.5 hours, and then that was enough to get me to the end, and with like a little 10-minute nap at the side of the trail. And so I thought this year, so I did the full winter spine in January, and I thought, oh, I'll just do the same sleep strategy again. I'll just sleep on the second night for 2.5 hours, 3 hours, and then I'll be like golden for the rest of it. And that didn't work. So you think that whatever worked before doesn't always work the same time, does it? So I think, do you feel like you've got to have a bit of a fluid approach to sleep, and just sort of do you kind of make it up as you go along, or have you ever had any races where you've made a plan for sleep and it's worked like bang on exactly?
Yeah, so Tour was the first race where I've ever had to factor in sleep. So I've not done, because obviously like 100-mile distances,
Don't need
for the
to.
most part, you don't need sleep. And I've not done anything. So I've not done anything in that in between distance of 100 to 200 miles. So I don't know. I mean, I certainly think, yeah, I think if I can get, if you can get that first sleep right, I think it probably sets you up for the rest of the race. But I got that first sleep wrong, and I was kind of um I was kind of running at a deficit then the whole time, if that makes sense. So I was just constantly fighting. No, I wasn't fighting sleep. So like this is the thing. I wasn't falling asleep on my feet at all. Like I know some people will literally just be like, oh, I was walking along and the next thing I woke up on the ground. I didn't have that because I was fighting it all the time. But to be fair, during the day it wasn't that bad. It was at night that it became really a bit of an issue because there's nothing around you to stimulate you because it's dark. The only things that you can see are the little bubble of light in front of your from your head torch, and the bloody flags, the millions and millions of flags that just are everywhere. So, I mean, yeah, I was seeing flags for weeks after the race, like the runway of flags that would go up yet another hill. You just seem to, in Tour de Géants, you just seem to constantly be going up. You never seem to be going down. The whole race just goes up. I don't know how it's possible. Yeah. Um, yeah, but don't get me wrong. Like I look back and it's so funny. I mean, I remember on the last night, like just a few hours before I had that really harrowing experience in the woods, there was a thunderstorm all around us and we were high. Like, I mean, I don't know. It'd be lovely to know what it looks like in daylight. I really want to go back and do the route in daylight because I'm sure it's stunning. But yeah, all I could see was darkness and flags. Um, and yeah, so there was this thunderstorm and the rain was unbelievable. It was like horizontal rain it wasn't mega cold. It was a little bit cold, but it wasn't mega cold. So horizontal rain. So all I can see is like rain reflecting black back and a couple of flags in front of me. And this thunderstorm that's going around all around me. And ordinarily I would be quite um scared about the fact I am stood on top of a hill, a very
Okay, I think we're back. Are we back?
yeah, I think so.
Right. Okay. We'll see what happens. Where were we? We were just talking about
Thunder and
intelligence.
lightning.
Thunder and lightning. Yeah. Yeah. That's it. Yeah. So you said that you don't normally have hallucinations on long races, but what obviously you were saying how you thought that you were asleep. So does that count as a hallucination, or we're sort of talking about the traditional ones of seeing faces and rocks and things like that? You don't normally have those kind of
Well,
hallucinations.
the thing is, I do have that. I see things that aren't there, but I don't call them, I don't really call them hallucinations. Like maybe they are, but you do see things that aren't there. So um, like Tour de Géants was a really bad one for, you would think, because there were like random refuges just in the trees, like they're just everywhere. And like I would see what looked like a refuge in the trees, and then you'd get up to it and you'd be like, oh, it's just like a giant rock formation. Do you know what I mean? Um, or I had two at the Arc, which were really weird and they really disturbed me. And it was, I think part of it was because it was just starting to get bright. So it was that kind of like twilight where the lighting's a bit funny. And I was running along this like cliff top path and I saw I kid you not, I saw somebody in a high vis jacket quite far up the path, like 50, 100 meters up the path, and they disappeared behind a bush, right? And I went really on edge because I could no longer see them. And I was like, oh my God, they're going to jump out at me. This person in the high vis, they're going to jump out at me. They are. They're definitely jumping out of me. And I was like really on edge as I went past where they'd been. And then in retrospect, I was thinking, do you know what? It was probably like a reflective marker. Like on the trail, it was maybe like a bit, I don't know, a bit of tin foil or something that reflected the head torch. And then not that long after that, again, because it was kind of getting bright, I was like, that is a weird place. Like I no, well, it wasn't a weird place for a photographer, but I was like, what on earth is a photographer doing at this hour of the morning? Because this is not the right lighting for getting good images. I was like, that is I really he's gonna get some rubbish images. It's exactly what I was thinking. And I ran up, it was a gorse bush. Like it's so you know what I mean? Like so I'm fully aware of the fact that like it's just my brain misinterpreting what I am actually saying. But it was just the way the gorse bush was kind of like lined up. It just kind of looked like a lens of a camera. And yeah, so it's things like that. So are they hallucinations? Okay, maybe they are, but I am fully aware that it's just my brain's inability to like properly process what I'm seeing, if that makes sense. So
Yeah.
yeah. So yeah, Tour de Géants, the only one, and quite a lot of people have probably heard this story if they've listened to other podcasts, but the one thing on Tour de Géants, which I do not know if it was real or not, and I am waiting for somebody to confirm that I saw what I believe I saw, is like I was running through a little village. I mean, we ran through millions of villages, so I have no idea which one it was, but it was towards the end of the race. And we're running down through there's like two chalets. It's just those like narrow alleyways that you get in the Alps, and running down through it, and there's this big chalet, and in the top right hand window of this chalet there was a giant stuffed pink gorilla wearing a white t-shirt, and I fully maintain that somebody has put it in the window as a bit of a joke so that when there's runners telling people about a stuffed pink gorilla in the window, they're like, well, that clearly was a hallucination. And I don't know. I maintain there was a stuffed pink gorilla in that window. And I challenge anyone to prove me otherwise.
That's funny. I suppose something that quite specific, it must have been real. So because you wouldn't, yeah, normally you're imagining things that's kind of fit in with the landscape, aren't you? I know, like
Yeah.
I've on my longer runs, I've like hallucinated bears and stuff. That bears was a big theme in the summer when I did the summer fine race. There was a lot of bears, especially up in Kilda Forest, loads of them. And then knights, like giant knights in shining armor, which were just like trees, like this, like reflected in the sun and stuff.
Yeah, so these sorts of unbelievable types of hallucinations I've never had. Like the ones I've always had have been quite well, like I say, like a photographer or somebody in a high
Mm.
vis jacket. They've always been quite believable. So I've never been at the stage where, yeah, I'm seeing knights in shining armor, where you're just like, I suppose they could be actors, they could be people in costume. Yeah, actually, to be fair, they could be people in costume.
I think the most believable one I had, which is also unbelievable at the same time, was that I could see in the distance, like as I was coming through that forest, Kilda Forest, and I was really tired at that point. It was sort of the early hours of the morning. It was sort of light was breaking, so yeah, probably sort of like 5, 6 o'clock in the morning, like the witching hours, like for when you're like really sleep deprived. And I could see like in the distance, I was like, oh, there's a school trip, so I could see like a teacher wearing, I can't know if we're wearing a high vis or not, but a teacher leading a load of kids all down the trail towards me in the distance, probably like sort of a quarter of a mile away. And I was thinking, oh yeah, they're just out on a school field trip. Obviously, it'd be like a geography field trip. Obviously, that's why they're here and they're meant to be here. And I'm like, no, it's like 5 o'clock on a Friday morning. Why would there be a load of school kids up in Kilda Forest? Yes, so but I enjoy hallucinations. I didn't have any. I've never had any like scary ones particularly, because you always know that they're not real. I know I interviewed Nikki Spinks after the spine race this year, and I was a bit disappointed that she sort of dismissed hallucinations. Like she was just saying, "Well, I know that it's not true. I know that it's not real, so I just ignore it." I'm like, I wanted a bit more from you, Nick. I want you to sort of tell me about these hallucinations that you have, because I kind of enjoy seeing them and telling stories about what I've seen, and like, making people laugh with what I've seen. But she was like, no, it's not real, so I'm not interested.
All right, yeah. They are,
Fair
yeah.
enough.
I mean, I would quite fancy having some of the really weird ones, like somebody told me they'd seen like dead pigs hanging from trees, and I was like,
Oh,
I'm quite
yeah,
fancy seeing something like that. Bit more interesting
yeah.
than a photographer and somebody in a high vis jacket.
Tell a lie, I did see the Grim Reaper. That was one that I did, but it didn't bother me. I could just see, and all that was just like an upended tree in the forest that had sort of tipped up, and the shape of it from the distance looked like the silhouette of the Grim Reaper sort of stood there with his hood up and aside and
That's
stuff
quite harrowing, really. That's.
in a race where
I
you
mean,
could.
I would be thinking that is an omen. Nah, this is not ending well. Yes.
Well, fortunately, I'm not superstitious, so I was like, "That's not real. I know it's not real. I'll look this way and I'll see a bear down there anyway, so it doesn't matter." Awesome. What are your plans for this year? Because you've had a brilliant year so far, and we're only in April. So what's the plan for the rest of the year then?
Yeah, so yeah, I've got kind of a big enough season really, so I don't know at what point I'm going to burn out, so I just have to be mindful of it. But so I'm doing the Fellsman in a few weeks, which I'm really looking forward to. I've just heard such amazing things about it. It's like 60th anniversary. Really looking forward to that. I mean, the route is just amazing. It's beautiful. Right up my street, really. It's been a while since I've done a race that's kind of been up my street, if that makes sense. So yeah, looking forward to that. And then hopefully, yeah, we're in the Irish Fest at the Euros. That'll be quite cool. Um, I am signed up to Lavaredo, which is a race that went very badly for me last year. But it's only a month after Lavaredo, or sorry, a month after the Euros, and I've kind of been racing every month since February. So it might just be a bit much to ask for another 120k race, which is you go up to altitude a few times, and it's the trails are amazing. Like the trails are so runnable, um, and I'm certainly like in a better position for running that sort of route at the moment. Because last year, one of the problems was it wasn't that long after UTS, and I'd been training just elevation really for UTS. I'd been training like big, big climbs and not really doing much actual running. Whereas there is quite a bit of elevation in Lavaredo, but it's very, very runnable gradients. So I just got eaten alive within the first like 10k, really. And yeah, and then died a death. And then just kind of stumbled to the finish. And I did all right, primarily because the only reason I got third, but the only reason I got third is because everybody else pulled out in front of me. That's literally the only reason. So it wasn't like a particularly spectacular performance. It was just that everybody else didn't finish. So I think like at 20, so it's 130, 120 kilometers. I think at like 42 kilometers, I was like 15th woman. I didn't actually overtake any women, I don't think. I think literally like
They all dropped
what
out.
11 women in front of me dropped out, I think. Like it was maybe not that extreme, but do you know what I mean? Like it wasn't me, suddenly overtaking loads of people. It was just that they'd all got it goes out so hard. Have you done many European races?
No, not really. No.
Oh my God, it's actually vile, like how quickly they go. I'm not every European race I've done. they go out as if they're running like a 5K, 10K, call it 10K pace. They literally go out as if they're running 10K. And it's awful. It's just horrific. And it's like Tour de Géants, 220 miles. Everybody took off as if they're running 10K. And you're like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Like, we're going to be out for several days here. You do not need to run as if you're running 10K. Yeah,
Even
so it's pretty,
even the spine race has gone that way now, hasn't it? The everyone charging from the start. Yeah,
yeah, it's so silly. But yeah, so I'd love to go back and do Lavaredo, but we'll just have to see. The Euros is going to be a very, very tough race because it's obviously very competitive, but the route itself looks quite challenging. Like it's 4,200 meters of elevation in 58 kilometers. So it's pretty, yeah, there's going to be a lot of climbing. So we'll just see what state I'm in at the end of that. And then, yeah, I'm currently, yeah, supposed to be doing UTMB, but we'll see. We'll see how I feel about it. It's not, it's not really a race. Well, at the moment, I'm not like properly invested in it, which is probably not the best way to be because that's a race that you really have to be invested in. So there's other races I want to do first, like with races that I want to do for me, such as the Dragon's Back and things like that. So we'll see. I am currently supposed to be doing UTMB, but it remains to be seen whether I do it or Dragon's Back. So time will tell.
depends how tired you are come August.
Sorry.
Depends how tired you are come
Yeah,
August.
I think, oh God, I think I'd be in a better state at the end of Dragon's Back than I would at the end of UTMB. That's a race that goes off ridiculous, like ridiculous. When you look at the pace that people do in the first 10K, you're like, what are you doing? You're mad. That's why so many people blow up.
Well, I've got a media place at MCC, which is like the race at UTMB that no one's ever heard of because it's like it's the very first race on the Monday, and it's for the locals and people involved with the race. So I think they sort of let all the locals sign up to it, and then they give out places to people on media and stuff. So they just like gave me an invite, said come out, do the race, and make a holiday of it, sort of thing. So, and
Awesome.
that's the last 25 miles of the route. So you do for the last. So basically, the route profile is you start off in I can't remember the name of the village, but basically it's like a 7 kilometers of climbing to the peak, and then you drop down, and then go up again, and then drop down. And that's it. That's the end. So that'll be
That
interesting.
sounds far more pleasant than 170
Yeah,
kilometers.
yeah, 25. Yeah, so 40. Is it 40? It's not 40K. What is it? I don't know. I think it's classed as the 50K. So classed as the 50K division, even though it's only like 20, 25 miles, something like that. But yeah, that'll be. I've done. I did a 20 miler in Italy, around. Oh, what lake is it? I can't remember the name of the lake now. The big lakes that are out there. One's
Garda.
Lake Como. Which
Oh,
one was
Lake
it?
could be Lake Como, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a new race out there, where the full race is a big like 200. I think it's like 200 miler. I think it is.
Yes, it is Como, Lake Como, yeah. Yeah.
That was just like the last 20 miles of that, and that was the same. Like you set off like sort of a UTMB style start in a village by the lake, and it just narrows off into a tiny little like alleyway, and everyone just absolutely flew. And then you realise why, because as soon as you got around the corner and along the road, you realise it just instantly went to like a single track, and you were just sort of like stood waiting for people, just like it was just like a row of people going up this one single track that was all horrendously muddy. And you're like, right, I can see why people sort of sprinted from the start just to try and get out of the way of the crowd, possibly. So, yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, European races? But I'm hoping to do some more. But yeah, I hope everything goes all right with your training the rest of the year, and that you manage to achieve the goals that you want to achieve. And maybe I'll see you knocking around Chamonix then in August.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I'd like to say I will go, but I really have to be confident in my abilities to do well at that race, I think, before I'll commit to it. Because yeah, I've even seen like the starting list already, and it's just frightening. It's like, oh wow, that's gonna be a tough day at the office. So yeah, I mean, yeah, if you could get, I'd love to do, could get a top 10 place, I'd be so chuffed. But
Yeah.
looking at who's signed up to do it, I'm not so sure. But yeah,
You've got the ability and the pedigree and the experience to do it, I'm sure. So
well, it depends. Well, if Courtney turns up, well, I might just immediately. I am one place lower than I was going to be if she was there. So I like it's like Trans Gran Canaria. I just say I'll finish second. Courtney doesn't count. No, she's tremendous. Oh yeah, I wonder what she'll do next.
yeah, well, what is there for her to do next? She's
The
done it.
spine.
Yes, the spine. Yeah, yeah. Let's hope she comes and does that. That would be.
See her come and do some of the British like races. It would be quite nice, but um, yeah, she's quite selective about her races, isn't she? So, um, yeah,
So she can be picky, can't she?
absolutely.
And
Yeah.
why? Yeah, amazing. Is there anyone that you want to sort of shout out while you're here? Is there anything, um, any companies that sort of brands that support you and that you want to sort of give some airtime to?
Well, I probably should give a shout out to James because he's my partner because I think he actually listens to your podcast. I'm not very good at listening to podcasts, so I don't listen to his podcasts,
Not an issue.
especially not if I've been on it. As in, I don't want to listen to my own voice. Absolutely hate listening to my own voice. So yeah, no, I'm really lucky actually. I've got a great team of people at Scarpa Scarpa are really good to me for my footwear. They've kind of given me the opportunity to do some of these European races. Because running, contrary to popular belief, running is actually quite an expensive sport. So,
It is.
so, so yeah, I'm eternally grateful. I'm actually heading out to Italy next week to go and see the headquarters, which is quite exciting. So yeah. So I'm looking forward to a bit of Italian trail running. I'm hoping the weather has to be better than it is here. It just has to be. And so really grateful to them. And then I suppose I'm gonna give it. Do you know what? I'm gonna give a shout out to my new favorite uh, fueling company, which is Voom, because I've just recently gone on board with them, and what a difference their fusion fuel has made to me. I have dabbled in a lot of different kind of energy drinks, gels, and things like that, because I really suffer with nausea quite badly when I'm racing. I get a lot of GI issues, probably because I do push. I push reasonably hard, and my stomach seems to be the first thing that shuts down. Um, so I've tried loads and loads of different products, and I was given the opportunity to try some Voom, and the fusion fuel is just I don't know what's in it, but it's magic. Um, yeah, I raced hard at the Morris Mullins 50K, and I consumed crikey, how much of that did it? Must have been 2 liters of this of fusion fuel I had, and didn't have a minute of nausea. So yeah, it's a product I would really recommend for people who suffer getting carbs in, maybe suffer with nausea. Because it's made a huge difference to me. And yeah, I'm just so glad like I finally found something that works because you can despair a little bit at like dealing with sickness because it's a constant thing that I suffer with. And yeah, finally finding a nutrition strategy that works for me is a game changer because there's nothing that makes a race more miserable than feeling sick.
Mm.
I know it ends a lot of people's races feeling sick. So, if you can find something that doesn't upset your stomach, is easy to digest, yeah, it's brilliant. So, I have to give a shout out to them because they've they're really onto something with the fusion fuel. Really recommend it.
Right. I'll be sure to get a sample of that then. I've seen it knocking around on socials and everything. A few people have been recommending it, so I'll try that. I know I've personally had a few like major throwing up sessions in some races before, so I feel your pain. I know what it's
Oh,
like.
don't get me wrong. I'm a huge fan of the puke and rally. Like puke and rally, that is the way to go. But it also it only gets you so far.
So the key thing is to rally as well. It's the puke and the rallying you've got to do as well.
Yeah, you can't just be if you're just puking, that's not good. You got to puke, but then you got to rally afterwards.
Absolutely, 100%. Brilliant. Well, I appreciate you coming on, and we actually got it done in the end after all the gremlins in the system and computers shutting down and mine shutting down halfway through the interview. So hopefully I can still piece it together out of the bits that I've got, and we'll be able to put a podcast out. So thank you so much for coming on, Emma. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Excellent. So I'll catch up with you possibly in Chamonix, maybe not, but if I don't, then all the best for the rest of your season.
Thank you very much. Yeah, and you too, whatever races you've planned.
Yeah.
We're still recovering from the spine.
Well, yeah, I think I'll always be recovering from the spine. No, you've just mentioned the word that I'm not supposed to mention. I'm not supposed to talk about the spine on the podcast anymore. So even though we have spoken about it about 3 times, I'm doing the summer sprint in June. So the first 44 miles, doing that. That's going to be my sort of middle distance race. And then I promised the wife that I wouldn't do any long races this year. So I've got to stick to that promise.
Fair enough. Keep peace.
Happy wife, happy life. That's the motto in my house. Right. Thanks, Emma.
No bother. Thank you very much.
Cheers. Thank you. Bye, everyone.